My name is Ben Zaror. I head our investment management and research function here at MarketX. And today I'll be telling you about a company that has won multiple awards for one of the best tasting alternative meat products on the market from news outlets such as the New York Times. And they have, just raised in 2020 around $700 million in funding. That's on top of the funding that they've raised since 2012. The company, as you can see here in the presentation, is Impossible Foods. Impossible Foods is in the food tech space. And just to give you a quick background about the company before we jump into the industry overview, they essentially create an alternative meat product that allows the user, or let's call it the end user or the consumer, to have a product that smells, tastes, looks, and feels like meat, even down to the bloodiness of a beef patty. And they're on a mission to both save our planet in terms of having less land, water, energy utilized to raise cattle, but also to give consumers a healthier product that again allows them to still have the enjoyment of meat without the negative side effects of saturated fats. So let's jump into the overall industry. Today, the industry is worth around $15 billion, and it's expected to be worth around $140 billion by 2029. So there's a tremendous growth rate there. And it's essentially allowing the alternative meat market to capture 10% of the $1.4 trillion global meat market. And that's a tremendous chunk of the market in terms of where the alternative meat market is going. And the tailwinds behind this trend can be categorized into a few items. The first is the rising consumer awareness of a healthy lifestyle. And this is also, sort of the first and second trend come together. The second trend is COVID-19, but this is also fueled by the COVID-19 pandemic, right? And so consumers these days are looking for products that allow them to live a healthier lifestyle, as I mentioned. So eating products that are less heavily saturated with fats, such as a beef or pork product. And so those are the first two trends. The third trend is the technology that is coming out in the alternative food sector. And you have companies like Impossible Foods, like Beyond Meat, that are creating food technologies using all natural plant products, hormones, and so on and so forth, that are allowing folks to sort of step in the middle of the wavelength of either having meat or not having meat at all, right? So folks don't have to make the decision anymore. They can essentially have the best of both worlds. They can eat their plants and they can have the taste of meat at the same time, which is tremendous. And this is also trickling down into other sectors within the market. So for example, the pet food sector is now seeing a trickle down of the meatless trend. And so we're seeing a expansion across industries, not just a deepening within this specific niche of the alternative meat market. The headwind that we see as of today is the high processing costs of creating these products. And this is very solvable, and we believe that it's going to be solved in the near future as the market sort of picks up steam more and more. Economies of scale will tend to kick in, and the high processing costs will tend to come down. And also, as you can imagine, the R&D costs for these products upfront. For example, Impossible didn't launch a product till 2016, and the company was founded in 2011. And so between 2011 and 2016, that whole time they were raising money and doing R&D, right? And so as we sort of begin to move away from the initial launch, and that R&D cost begins to be spread out across multiple years, that also brings down the overall cost of the product as well. And we'll make the products a little more consumer friendly in terms of pricing. Now, the other side of the market that we're seeing, sort of, if you want to call it the commercial side, we're also seeing a high level of adoption across the hospitality industry, especially when it comes to restaurants. So, for example, Impossible Foods started off their business by partnering with restaurants, whether it's fast food or whether it's high end. You have partners like Burger King, and then on the high end side, you have partners like Momofuku Niki. And so what they've done is extremely smart. Actually, they've worked with creatives in the food industry to perfect their product, to perfect the Impossible meat product that they're putting out on shelves today. And so they've moved from that into the grocery section, which we'll talk about in a bit. The other side of the hospitality space also is hotels and airlines, right? So one day you're probably going to see, let's assume, example, you're flying on a Delta flight. You'd be able to order an Impossible burger or an Impossible sandwich, using an Impossible product. Now, going back to the overall company overview, so why we think this company is a great investment is because of the people behind it, right? Not only have they won awards for their products, as I mentioned earlier, but the reason why they've won those awards is you have folks within the company like the founder, Dr. Patrick Brown, who did research for a very long time at Stanford University in this space and decided to start a private company based on the research that he's done, right? Recruited many other PhDs and researchers within the space because of his stature, because of his name in the industry, and they were able to create a fantastic product. And so there's that specific reason of the founding team just being very knowledgeable about the product that they're making, but also the investors within a product, which we'll talk about the investors within the company, which we'll talk about in a short bit. Now, in terms of the product itself, the flagship product, the Impossible Burger, came out in 2016. But recently, the company has released Impossible Sausage and Impossible Pork as well. They're looking to create a chicken product and a fish product as well. So those are hopefully going to be released in the next year or so. So in terms of the revenue model, you have 15,000 restaurants across US, Canada, Hong Kong, Macau, and Singapore. And you also have Impossible now in supermarkets and butcher shops. Folks like Walmart, Fairway, Kroger, they've all partnered with Impossible to offer their product on their shelves. They also have a direct-to-consumer channel. You can go on impossiblefoods.com and order directly from their website. And lastly, they're starting to white label their product. And so if you're a food creative, you're able to sort of work with the Impossible product and make it your own as well. As for the customer segments, you have numerous types of demographics that you can consider as customers. You have the flexitarians, as I mentioned earlier, folks that sort of want to live a healthier lifestyle and still want to eat meat, but maybe once a week. But at the same time, still like the taste of meat. And so those folks would usually go for an Impossible product. You also have the vegans and vegetarians. You have the more health conscious consumers as well. The environmentally impact conscious consumers, folks that want to sort of go along with the company's mission of saving the earth from greenhouse gases that come from the cattle industry. And lastly, you have folks with religious diets, and so folks that are eating halal, kosher, maybe somebody of a Hindu faith where they cannot eat any animals. The Impossible product would be a sort of a friendly choice for them. And so looking at the overall enterprise value of the company, we're looking at a $7.6 billion valuation. with enterprise to revenue number of just around 22x. And so we believe that this is actually a fair value, because when looking at a company like Beyond, which has gone public already, they have a market cap as of today of around $10.5 billion, with an enterprise value to revenue number of around 21x, right? So we believe that the valuation for Impossible Foods is actually pretty fair in the secondaries market. And so, in terms of industry growth, we spoke about this already. We're looking at a 32% CAGR through 2029. Tremendous growth within the industry, hitting $140 billion by 2029. And as for a competitive landscape, as you can see here, there are multiple buckets that competitors can fall into, right? There's companies that are creating raw materials, others that are processing the product, companies that are formulating products, and others that are just selling consumer products, right? And as you can see here, Impossible sort of falls into 3 of the 4 categories. They source raw materials from other companies, and they essentially process, formulate, and sell the product themselves. Now, in terms of competition, we mentioned Beyond is the closest in the alternative meat sector. There are other players in the alternative meat sector as well, but the top 2 are Beyond and Impossible Burger. In terms of product, Impossible Burger is the leader. They've been rated by multiple outlets, as I mentioned earlier, as the best tasting meat alternative in the market. So they have a leadership position there. But obviously, there's still some competition with the typical traditional beef market as well, right? So if you look at some of the product background or nutritional background here, you'll see that Impossible is actually the healthiest between the 3. You're looking at calories; they have the lowest calories. They have a similar amount of protein across the board. Total fat, they have the lowest amount of fat. And in terms of the calcium, iron, and potassium content, they're also pretty high up there in those contents. The only downside of these alternative meat products is the sodium content. Now, 370 milligrams, 350 milligrams is really not that high, but you have to consider that it is higher than 75 milligrams in the traditional beef, if you were to have a traditional beef patty. And so moving on to the financials, what we've seen, and these financials have been guided by management. We've sourced them from a resource that essentially covers Silicon Valley companies called Information. And we've seen triple-digit growth between 2017 and 2020, right? And again, just to remind you, they launched their first product in 2016, which is the Impossible Burger. And you can see around a 200%, 210% average growth year over year between 2017 and 2020. In 2021, we're seeing that growth slow down, typical with a mature company like Impossible that's about to go public. We think that the company will go public this year, maybe in Q4 of this year, maybe at the latest Q1 of next year. But as companies mature and as they begin to go public, you do see their growth rates slow down. Now, 88%, 90% here is still a tremendous growth rate for any company, right? Especially one that has a market leadership. And these are conservative measures that we put into place. They probably will have a higher growth rate in 2021 and moving on. But we just want it to be fair to you all and be super conservative in how we approach this company. And even with these conservative metrics, we're still seeing tremendous numbers for the company's financials, right? So this year we are seeing a positive net earnings of around $35 million, moving into 2025, where you'll see around $550 or $600 million in positive net earnings. And that's, again, a tremendous growth in both revenue and net earnings. Moving on to the sensitivity analysis. So as of today, as I mentioned earlier, the company is worth around 7.6 billion in the secondaries market in terms of enterprise value. Their last raise was around $200 million, and so we believe they still have that raise on their balance sheet. And so looking at overall entry enterprise value, it's around $7.4 billion, right? And for the exit value, in terms of when they go public and their exit offering, we believe it'll be around $10 billion. We're just kind of comparing it to Impossible Foods and where Impossible Foods is at today. Impossible has a revenue number of around $400 million. Beyond, which is a public company, has a revenue number of around $400 billion, while Impossible has a revenue number, and again, we're being conservative with it, of around $325 million. Beyond is valued at market cap of, again, 10.5 billion. And so we believe that it's a pretty sort of easy number to think about Impossible being valued at $10 billion when they go public. And we've sort of stretched this out across multiple exit valuations here. And as you can see, the IRR, even if they came down to $9 billion for initial offering, we're seeing that still be a fairly good IRR, right? Whereas if they go up to the $12 billion mark, which is where we believe they will trade at in terms of market cap shortly after going public, we're seeing a 55% IRR there.